Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Um, I'm pretty sure you guys might have come across this Salesforce Pen article on the state of Salesforce technical careers in 2025. Now, obviously, it's October. It's October 12th of October today, 2025. Almost we're uh, nearing towards the end of the year, right? So I would like to give my perspective with respect to Salesforce career, at least from a New Zealand perspective. It might be similar to Australia as well, and maybe to United States or to the other countries, right? Now, if you look at this article, it's very well written, right? Um, so um, obviously they didn't mention about rising demand when it comes to the technical architects, right? And it also talked about uh, developers' demands going down, especially in a country like India, and also spoke about admins and BAs are seeing growth, but the roles are changing, and also mentioned AI is reshaping roles across the board. Right now, I will cover these things in a second, but before that, I also want to acknowledge that everyone these days talking about AI, right? Especially if you're into Salesforce or if you're into ServiceNow, or for that matter, any tech stack, right? AI is the buzzword. Everyone um, talks about artificial intelligence as if it's the game changer um, technology of our civilization, which is kind of true, but I also believe there are lots of hype associated with it. Um, Take Salesforce, for example, right? Everything they wanted to talk about, Agentforce and Data Cloud. It is annoying to the point, right, where every person I met, oh, are you not working on agents? Well, I don't have a use case for agent, right? So there, the I tell you the difference, right? This is my opinion because I've been in artificial intelligence space for quite a long time, right? I started working when I was no, I started learning AI when I was 16, where my dad bought a book on neural networks, right? So I started reading it, and then when I went to university, I took a elective course on neural network. I did a thesis on neural networks. So I've been across the AI for substantially long, for more than a decade, right? But not in a level that I'm not a researcher, right? Obviously, I don't. Um, that's not actually true though, right? Because I did build a large language model for climate change. So, but I'm not actually a researcher, right? Someone with a PhD degree. I don't have a PhD degree, but I can work on LLMs. I can fine tune algorithms, deep learning algorithms. I do know what, I do have a lot of knowledge about machine learning algorithms. And yeah. Um, sorry, got distracted. So what I was trying to say, right? Everything you hear these days that talks about AI, and now the biggest reason behind it is the fear of missing out, right? Now you must be thinking you will be missing out. That's why you should be learning AI. I'm not discouraging you guys to learn AI. I'm definitely not doing that, but just hear me out, right? It's just a vendor who has a fear of missing out, that they are fearful that their business will go down, their sales will not spike. That's why they're doing aggressive push. Salesforce is a classic example. I am not seeing much improvement in the other platform areas, right? They are doing releases 3 times a year, which is a part of a normal release, right? I do see they are improving, some of the stuff here and there, which is some of the stuff makes no sense anyways. Um, but they're more pushing towards Agentforce version 3. Now it's a support for MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is all good. But that being said, right, I often ask businesses, do you have a use case, right? Just don't engineer a use case when you don't have one, right? That's the thing. And people don't want to understand that part They're just so much of hooked up because of fear of losing their jobs. And they're just pushing this narrative over and over and over. We do need AI. We don't in every scenarios. Yes, there are areas where we might need AI to automate certain things, make our life easier, but not every freaking area. We it's just saying, hey, we don't need frontline stuff. Sweet. If you don't need frontline stuff, we don't need managers. We don't need CEOs. We don't need pretty much anybody, right? If I use that analogy, why do we need to keep a human being? I don't want to keep a human being just to feel. Look, I'm a transhumanist. For us, human upgrade is the first thing we talk about, right? So if I put my transhumanism hat, I believe humans are not needed pretty much on any single thing on this planet. Um, but that gets offensive to people, right? The same thing that gets offensive to people when you hear, "Oh, we don't need frontline stuff." That's just bullshit, in my opinion. You do need people. You do need AI to help them drive productivity. Yes, that is the right thing to do, right? If a certain manual task, you can automate it so that they can focus on something else and make them more productive. They can focus on bigger tasks, complicated tasks, right? Um, so coming back to the Salesforce career question, um, obviously, if I look at the New Zealand market, unfortunately, the market is not so great. I mean, I will acknowledge that, not just in the Salesforce space. I do hear stories which is pretty sad. For instance, there was a report on a place. I don't know where that place is. Maybe in South Island or is it North Island? I never heard about that place. There was a requirement of a forklift operator, and the company um, which operates in that area, they they said they often expect like two applicants, three applicants, right? Now this year they received 120 applications. Now you have to understand, New Zealand is a small country. We have 5.25 or 5.3 million population. It's not India, it's not China, it's not the United States. We're a tiny country. So 120 application for a single job, it's a big thing for us, right? Maybe in your country, 5,000, 10,000 applications means nothing, but in New Zealand, it's a big thing. And people are willing to move from Auckland, Wellington, and from other places, which is really a sad state of economy at this stage. What we're seeing, and lots of Kiwis are moving to Australia for better opportunity. Now, obviously, that's putting a lot of pressure on Australian economy as well. Like lots of immigrants are coming from different parts of the world, and it is causing resentment, right? I mean, I don't blame people. Um, because obviously if my kid is born in this country, I'd expect my kid to get the first priority rather than someone else, right? But which is fair, because where else my child will go and find an opportunity? No, I'm just giving an example, right? Um, so so it is so the job crunch is happening across the sector, not just in Salesforce space. So the things have slowed down a bit, right? Compared to 2022, I would say roles have gone down. I wouldn't say to the extent, but it has evolved. For instance, uh, if in 2020 or 2021 during COVID time, if you are someone with just a Salesforce admin cert, you could find an opportunity in New Zealand. I mean, it was not that difficult. Now it's not the case. Now the companies expect you to have experience, certifications, of course, and then maybe other factors. Right? So it's not really that easy anymore, and they do expect, for instance, if I take an admin role, they expect admins to do not just flows, a little bit understanding of Apex, understanding of Omni Studio. They do have expect you to know multiple clouds, like for instance, Service Cloud, Sales Cloud. Maybe they also expect you to have experience on um, Experience Cloud. So things are changing, right? The same goes for the BA roles. Sometimes if you're a generic BA, right? I work with generic BAs who are not Salesforce BAs, and some of the best BAs I've worked in my career are generic BAs, right? Technical BAs who gets into who could plug themselves into any tech stack, right, and bring their business knowledge, and that is a very very specialized skills. Even though you call them as a technical BA, but I would say like some of the best BAs I worked in my career are generic BAs who can plug themselves into different tech stack. So their roles, I can't really say from their perspective. What I can see, what I can say based on my observation, especially in New Zealand, if you're really a talented BA, you will find a role, irrespective of which tech stack that is. But if you're looking to get into a very specific Salesforce role, then I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. Like I said, our market is smaller. Now, I'll get into the technical architect step later. Let me talk about developer part a bit. It's a bit interesting. Developer demand goes down in India. I don't know much about Indian market, to be honest. I never worked there, so I have no idea how the market sounds like, especially in the Salesforce field. Maybe they have too many people. Maybe demand uh, superseded the supply. Oh, sorry, maybe the supply superseded the demand. Say so. Maybe that's why the demand has gone down, and maybe something to do with outsourcing. I can't really say. But in New Zealand, you do get paid well if you're a very good developer. Developer means not someone who works on the Apex code, but on the flows, Omni Studio, Experience Cloud, CPQ. Obviously, now they've changed it to Revenue Cloud. Um, means someone who can work as a senior technical consultant, right? Sometimes developers goes as a technical consultant. So I haven't seen much slowness when it comes to developer opportunity. Um, However, in saying so, this year I haven't seen either much demand for functional either, right? So it's kind of a balanced out, right? Um, but sometimes I do see, more demand for contract roles rather than perm roles. Say, someone looking for 6 months developer role, or someone advertising for a 6 month developer role, or someone advertising for a year fixed term contract technical consultant role. So I've seen something similar on that line. But in saying Salesforce roles have slowed down a bit. Now, technical architects, right now, this is very interesting um, topic. Now, if you're talking about CTAs, right, that certified technical architects, then especially in New Zealand, we do have few, maybe under 10 or 20. I don't know the exact numbers. I worked with one of the person before who was CTA, was my boss. Pretty talented guy. Um, and so we do have opportunities for architects in New Zealand, but that does not mean you need to get the CTA certification for it, right? I don't have CTA certification. I work as a senior solution architect in one of the biggest New Zealand government agency. But that being said, I also work on a different tech stack. So people have misconception, right? I mean, I don't call it as a misconception, to be honest. Sorry, I take that word back. My apologies. Um, so the technical architect role, or Salesforce architect role, um, it depends from organization to organization, right? If you look about if you think about from a large government agencies, right? Especially if I look at my role, there's very little hands-on involved, right? I do get into hands-on sometimes when I have to do proof of concept, but it's mostly governance, right? Governing your architecture form, to making sure the people who are building solutions are complying they're in compliance with the architecture practices. Um, Basically, we are the enabler uh, for things to come, right? And I normally don't get into the weeds. Like it's always, 10,000 feet view vision, and you need to be across the enterprise to drive the right outcome. And and you should be open-minded when it comes to tech stack. At times, you might say, "Look, Salesforce is not the right solution. Let's use a different tech stack for this specific use case," right? So you need to be open-minded when it comes to that. So that's architecture, right? Because it's not about how, it's about why you wanted to do it, right? How is the easy part, right? That's now architects. There's a very misconception in Salesforce ecosystem. I've seen this among people. Once you have Salesforce certification, people started to assume they're architects. Not really though, right? I mean, having certifications won't make you an architect. It comes with experience. It comes with how much you know about this stuff, right? And I've seen people transitioning from developer to architecture like in 2, 3 years. That's not really an architecture, right? You're still acting as a senior developer, you know. And if you're involved in coding and building flows, and even if you build the flows in the right way, that's not really an architecture, right? Architecture involves way more than that. What you're describing is a part of solution architecture. I won't call it as a senior solution architecture. I will call it as a part of a solution architecture. When you are into solution architecture space, you do get into design. You do get into sometimes proof of concept. You do get into helping developers understand the importance of architecture, not just from that specific solution point of view, but from a wider enterprise landscape, right? And it's your responsibility if you're an architect to make sure the solution you're recommending or proposing should align with the scalability and maintainability principle, right? Or in other words, keep it simple principle, KISS principle, not the KISS, other KISS you're talking about, if you know what I mean. Um, so yes, the role for a technical architect might be on demand, but that does not mean that every business needs an architect to solve just a Salesforce problem. Like I could get into a different tech stack, right? And if I have an architecture foundation, I could pretty much hook myself into any tech stack in the world: Azure, AWS, Snowflake, ServiceNow, Monday.com, Workday, Oracle, right? All I need the foundation and understand the ecosystem, right? And then I'm good to go. Then I will use my existing architecture knowledge. And a lot of principles are similar when it comes to governance, the right data model, um, to make sure we are leveraging out-of-box capability, reusability approach, and to make sure that things are properly governed. So that's one of the role of an architect. So that's why I don't like to call myself as a Salesforce architect. I do a lot of things on Salesforce ecosystem, but I also do another. So that's how you should be thinking yourself if you wanted to get into architecture. And it's great you wanted to get certification, and that's a great way to test your knowledge. But the mistake what I've seen, like I said, lots of people do, and they wonder why they can't find an opportunity, is that because once they take a certification, they started to think they're not developer anymore. If you've been coding, let's say, for a few years, you won't become an architect straight away. It comes from your from an attitude, from the way you wanted to do things, right? So even if you're a developer, start getting involved into designs, start getting involved into business aspect of it, right? Architect is a bridge between a business and a technology. So business, if they wanted to understand technology, they often comes to an architect to say, "Hey, what is your opinion on this landscape? I wanted to bring this uh, business use case uh, to life, what tech stack you think will be a good for us to consider, right? And that's the role of an architect. Yes, senior developers will implement it. Some companies you have staff engineer, chief staff engineer who acts as an architect, developer slash Google is one classic example. So even if you're a developer, right, don't just think you're not doing architecture. You are doing architecture if you're designing in the right way. So that's my advice. If you wanted to get into architecture, um, just start thinking from now. So now that goes to my final question. Should you be learning Salesforce, right? Looking at the demands on low demand, I would say it depends, right? I would say what exact I would so this is my here's my question to you. Are you not happy with your current tech stack what you're using? You could be a SAP architect, you could be or a consultant, or you could be a Monday.com. Why do you want to change it to Salesforce? Please do not say you wanted to make lots of money. Right? You could make lots of money in your own tech stack if you're really talented, right? So that's one of the things I highly discourage people. Don't come to an ecosystem because you wanted to make a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's a wrong way to get into it. You should be getting into something because you wanted to add value, uh, solving a certain complex use case, right? And for that use case, maybe Salesforce is the right answer, maybe it's not. So that's the question I should be asking you. Why do you want to get into Salesforce in the first place? If you are somebody new to the ecosystem, I would say sure, please give it a try, right, and see how it goes. But you got to be patient because the job market is not great as it used to be before. So you may find a few months to break into to the industry. For that, you need to start going to user conference, start talking to people, build networking, right? Then you will be able to get your foot in the door. That's the way I would recommend. Um, so yeah, so that's the thing I wanted to discuss today, right? Because I understand, you might guys might be looking at Salesforce and think, hey, this is a gold mine. I'm afraid to say that's no longer the case, right? It might be the case a few years ago, not anymore, right? It all depends upon the value you can bring. In the age of artificial intelligence, only thing that will matter is the value you can add, right? Otherwise, AI could do, right? As per the conversation or the narratives they wanted to sell, right? So yeah, that's my advice, right? So if you're a working professional or somebody looking to do your own stuff, right? Um, my question to you: what? Why is why do you want to get into Salesforce? That's the first thing you should be asking yourself. What is it in your current tech stack? It could be a ServiceNow developer. You could be an Azure person. Why do you want to get into Salesforce? That's the question you should be asking yourself. Just please keep the money part aside and then think about it. What do you want to do? Right? That's all I wanted to say. So, so that being said, hope you guys have an amazing Sunday. Wherever you are, in New Zealand, it's horrible weather. It's rainy, and yeah. That being said, have a great Sunday. Adios.